So I recently took a very long flight and I I have a surfboard in my room at the minute. I'm in an Airbnb and there's like lumps on it. I don't know if it's like wax or some shit, but I just wanted to touch it and then I lost my train of thought. I'm back, sorry. So yeah, on my flight, I was looking at the movie selection and they had The Last Showgirl, which is the movie with Pamela Anderson. And I'd really been wanting to see it. So I was like, okay, perfect, I'll watch it. And I think it was, genuinely, it will be one of my favourite films ever. I think it just captured girlhood so well, and the main feeling that I felt throughout watching the entirety of the film was that even though they were older than me, they were just like me. So if you don't know the premise of the movie, it's basically Pamela Anderson plays this girl or woman. I think she's like 50-ish. And she's worked for like 30 years as a showgirl in this, not play, I don't know, like performance, kind of like a burlesque style performance. But it used to be really famous and really popular, and she used to be like treated like a celebrity and get flown all over the world and whatever. And like obviously as time had gone on, it had lost traction and, you know, like gained a bad reputation or become seen as like untasteful, whatever. But she still viewed it as this like amazing, like empowering thing. And so it's mainly about her, but there's another character in it who's played by Jamie Lee Curtis. And she used to work there, but she quit. And now she works in, I think it's like a casino, and she's like a shot girl. And I honestly just feel like while I was watching it, the things that they were doing, the things that they were saying, the things that they were wearing, that was another big thing for me, was the outfits. I was like, I would wear all these outfits. I would do all these things. Like if it was me doing it at my age, it wouldn't be weird. And it's like, I just think there's this huge stigma around aging and what is acceptable to do at certain ages. And I do think that there is logic in growing out of things. You know, like I think it is important to know when you've moved past something. But I do think that certain things are... It's not linear. I don't know if linear would be the right word. And it's not universal. Like, I may have grown up out of something now, but one of my friends who's the same age as me might just be starting to get into that thing, you know? I think music's a really good example of this. Like, you might listen to one genre of music and love it, and then you don't listen to it anymore, but your best friend is just getting into it, you know? Kind of like that. And I think it happens all the time. You can apply this to any element of your life. You know, some people do this with their careers. They're like, oh, I feel too old to have that job. You know, this is like the main premise of the movie, kind of. And I think the biggest part is that everyone's like at a different point in their life, regardless of their age. And like I saw this like really cliche, cringe tweet once. I mean, it's not cliche, but it's kind of like, it's just one of those like, chin up princess, like one of those posts. And it was like, some people will become a millionaire at 21 and then die at 30. Some people won't become a millionaire until they're 30, but they'll live till 90. Like, it's all relative, you know? And I think, objectively speaking, it's hard to it's very easy to pass judgment on your experiences and compare your experiences to someone else's experiences. Like, if someone starts doing something that you used to do, I sound like a fucking hypocrite, but it's very easy to be like, like, why are they doing that? Or they're too old for that? Or why are they dressing like that? Or why are they, whatever, you know, like anything that they're doing. Or like, what, yeah, I don't know. Just being judgmental, I think, based on your lived experience. And I think that's something that you kind of have to gauge over time. And I think if you're not like a very introspective person, or you're not super aware of yourself, you might not be aware of the ways in which you're doing this to other people. Because I think a big part of my conditioning was, I used to say this all the time, like, I need to get a real job, or like an adult job, or a big girl job, you know, and I'm referencing a degree job. And I used to say that at work, and kind of like, it would offend like my managers, because they'd be like, what do you mean? Like, we do the same job, but like, I'm a big girl. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is a real job. And it's like that thing of like, I think we've been, maybe not we, maybe me, I think I've been conditioned into thinking that hospitality or customer service is you know, a progression job. Like, you do it to get somewhere else. You do it to put you somewhere else. You know, you do it to save for something else, or you do it while you're studying, or, you know, things like that. Whereas like, it's like if you have like a corporate job, that's like the end goal, you know, and then you just get on the ladder and work your way up, or try your best to. And I think that's like a big judgment that I've carried, is that working a customer service job is not like fulfilling, which is bullshit, because I've always worked customer service jobs. Like, I've been a waitress and a barista, and I've worked in retail. Like, I've done customer service since I was 14, you know, and I like really enjoy it. I love being a barista. It's literally like what I do for a living. But again, I can't see myself doing it forever, you know? And I don't know if it's maybe because I think a lot of it can be tied to the physicality of certain jobs. You know, in this film, a big part of it is the way she looks. She goes for this interview, or this like competition dance trial thing, and they say to her, like, you're just not hot enough. Like, you were hired when you were young and hot. You can't dance very well. You're just, you know, not that hot anymore. And like, in real life application, you can kind of apply that to like, you know, when you're younger and you're nimble and you're like moving around, it's like, as you get older, you know, you start to have more bodily problems. Like, it's normal as you get older to want a job that's less mobile, because it's hard to upkeep that if you start having like health problems, which are more common as you get older. Like, it's very rare, you know, that you go into a cafe and you see like a 60-year-old woman or man, like, actually I want to get into that in a minute, woman working, like, running around and doing all the manual job. Not that it doesn't happen, and I've worked with like many people that are older age that do stuff like that and do jobs like that, but it's just like, it's almost like not the norm to see, you know. I think it's like we've been conditioned into thinking that that's like not usual, and you know, this is actually something that I wanted to discuss as well, is the male-female divide in this situation, because I think if you're a man and you're a barman, you could be a barman and you know, it's not unusual or uncommon to see barmen that are older. And I mean, it's not uncommon to see like older barmaids, you know, like, it's not, but it's like, I feel like women get shamed for that shit so much more than men. Sorry, I've just realised my window's open and it's been open for like days and I'm on the ground floor. It's kind of concerning. Anyway, yeah, like I think women get shamed so much more for doing certain jobs at certain ages, whereas men wouldn't. But I think that's like very, very common, you know, who like, I'm not here to have that discussion because it's obvious that happens. I think like one of the main points upon watching that episode that I kind of experienced and felt while watching it was that you carry on and you keep being who you are and what you are and doing what you love, and you maybe don't necessarily notice the shift in perception of you or the world around you, you know, especially if you're doing the same thing, if you have the same job and you don't like move or whatever, and you know, you keep wearing the same clothes and doing the same things and going to the same places, like those places all, you know, they're familiar to you, but they're evolving, and then the clientele is evolving and the people around them are evolving. And I think this is a thing like with aging, right? And I know I'm very young, I'm only 23, so like anyone that's older that listens to this is probably going to be like, what do you mean? But I've noticed that with aging comes this, I don't know how the word to use, it's almost like you freeze, like things freeze in your mind. Like I could go somewhere and then I'll go back there and I'll be like, I haven't been here in ages, and think it's like a few months ago, but it was actually like 4 years ago. And then it's like a completely different experience, but like, you know, in your head it's so fresh. And I actually was looking up this thing today on TikTok, of all places, called the 2020 theory. And I don't know if anyone's heard about it, but it's basically like during lockdown and COVID, our perception of time was just like completely shattered, because for the first time our routine was disrupted. And a lot of people refer to COVID as the great pause, because we weren't doing anything and we lost like 2 to 3 years of our lives. And, you know, a lot of people think that like we're still mentally stuck in 2020, even though that was 5 years ago, because 2017 to me it feels like it was 3 years ago, but it was actually 7 years ago or 8 years ago, whatever it was. And it's just a really interesting phenomenon. And I think the movie, although it wasn't focused around, you know, COVID or whatever, it kind of portrayed that same thing of losing your sense of time, almost like Lair of the Lotus Eaters vibe, if you've seen Percy Jackson. I don't know how that's relevant, but it kind of gives that vibe of like, you know, you're just doing it and you're doing it and you're doing it and you're going, and then all of a sudden before you know it you're going grey, and like, you know, and it's like watching Pamela, and she's honestly, it's a phenomenal performance, and I don't know how she didn't win an award, or, you know, it was just amazing. And I don't know anything about acting, but I just think it was so raw and real. And I think a big part of that would have translated into her career and her like personal life, which I think is why she was able to play the character amazingly. And it was just, you can see she's grasping at the last of, okay, I've missed out an important part. Basically, her show that she's doing is shutting down, and it's about her grappling with the fact that she doesn't know what she's going to do with her life, and, you know, her trying to figure out what to do. And this is a spoiler, so if you don't want to know, please don't listen to this part, but in the end, you never find out what she does. The last scene is her doing the last performance, and right before that she has a crash out, like this huge crash out, and there's like this theory that she committed suicide because she couldn't handle not being a showgirl anymore. Like, her identity had been tied to being a showgirl for the last like 30 years of her life, which is like, if you think about it, like over half of her life. And I've had similar experiences. Like, this is so like, you're gonna be like, shut the fuck up, Evie, but like, I remember when I stopped being involved in drum and bass, right? I remember being like, this has happened to me a few times with a few different things, but when I stopped being involved with drum and bass, that felt kind of similar, obviously not to the extent, but I remember thinking, who am I without this? I don't know. Same thing happened when I stopped smoking weed. I realised, who am I without this? I tied my identity so fiercely to these ego traps, right? And you don't realise when you're doing something because you enjoy it. There's nothing telling you that you can't actively enjoy something and genuinely like taking part in that thing and it still be an ego trap. You know, they're not mutually exclusive. And I think it's interesting because it's like, when you come out of it, there's this period of it's like vacuum theory, you know, I speak about vacuum theory a lot, and it's like, there's this empty space, right? And you feel, it's like when you lose someone, when you go through a breakup, or you lose a friend or whatever, or someone dies, it's this hole. They leave this hole, and it takes time for things to fill that hole. And especially if you do something over and over and over again, and this is why like addicts, right, they find it so hard to stop doing drugs, because right, imagine the vacuum as like a pie chart. Every time they chose a drug over another activity, their pie chart became more and more drug centered. So their pie chart being their vacuum. So if you think, you know, every time that they, instead of going for a hike in the morning with their other friends, they did drugs the night before with their other friends, those friendships that they once had aren't as strong anymore, you know. And if you think this happens over years and years and years of conditioning, when it gets to the end of it, you know, this person might be like 90% drug-filled vacuum pie chart, if that makes sense. So if you take that away, you're taking away their social circles, what they do for fun, you know, potentially a source of income if they're like into dealing. I don't know, that goes hand in hand quite a lot. And, you know, it's the same in this movie. Like, there's a big focus, again, another spoiler, in this movie about how she neglected her daughter, and she doesn't have a very good relationship with her daughter because she spent so much time focusing on this show, which is now ending and leaving her with nothing. She doesn't have any money, she doesn't have a good relationship with her daughter, she has nothing to show for it, she doesn't even have a place to live at one point, you know. She's like focused all of her life on this one thing because it made her feel pretty, and she tied her worth to being pretty and being hot. And then as she gets older, you know how it is with women as they age, or, you know, once you hit fucking 30, you're not worthy anymore, or, you know, you're not good enough, or you're not, whatever it is. And it's like that realization that there's that hole and there's nothing you can do about it. And this is like going back to what I was saying about people that are addicts. This is why they have such a hard time, because it's very difficult to reframe your whole life when there's that much of a hole, you know. You have to find new friends, you have to find new hobbies, you have to find new ways to eat, you have to find, you know, new places to go, you know, things are going to trigger you. It's like, it's actually very difficult to take something out of your life or have something removed from your life when that thing played such an important role in shaping who you were. And this is why I place such a focus on, personally, right, on not tying myself to things. And I made a podcast like 10 minutes ago actually about being alternative and alt girls, and like I think one of the reasons that I view that through the lens that I do is because I see these people tying themselves to this identity, like they only wear one thing or one type of thing. And it's like, I've been there, like I've only tied myself to certain things, and it comes back to bite you in the ass like so bad. And the thing is, you're never going to realise that, you know, you say, oh, it's just music, or it's just fashion, or it's just this, or it's just that. But when you tie yourself, you can tie yourself emotionally to anything and egoically. Like, it doesn't have to be what you wear or who you are or where you go or how you know, who you hang around with. Like, these are all ego traps, potentially. And the thing is, something can be an ego trap and still be good for you. I'm not saying that these things that are ego traps, like, if they're friends, I'm not saying they're bad people. They can be. It's not like, they're not morality cues. So I just want to make that clear before anyone says, like, that I'm, like, being harsh. I understand it, and especially when something feels good and you enjoy it, of course you're going to want to do it more and all the time, and, you know, that's why, especially if you get, like, a positive reaction for something, like, going back to what I was saying in my last podcast about, maybe I'll just make this the part 2, because I feel like it's fed in quite nicely, but, about what I said about, I've lost my train of thought. I can't remember what I was saying. I don't know, ego traps, and I don't know. I might have to end the podcast there. My brain's just completely switched off. Well, there we have it. Sorry, folks. Maybe there'll be a part 3.